The autumn morning of September 9, 2022, brought unexpected drama to the royal household when Prince Philip's private legal advisor, Sir Michael Stevens, arrived at Windsor Castle with a sealed envelope bearing the Duke of Edinburgh's personal seal. Inside the mahogany-paneled study where Queen Elizabeth II had spent countless hours reviewing state papers, the Queen's private secretary received what would become one of the most controversial documents in modern royal history. The will, written in Prince Philip's distinctive handwriting and witnessed by two trusted naval officers just months before his passing, in April 2021, contained provisions that would send shockwaves through the monarchy. Unlike the public portion of his estate that had been released earlier, this private codicil dealt specifically with matters of precedence, titles, and the future structure of royal duties. What made this document extraordinary was not just its contents, but the careful deliberation Philip had put into every word, consulting constitutional experts and even seeking guidance from his late wife during her final months. The most stunning revelation came in the third paragraph, where Philip explicitly outlined his wishes regarding Princess Catherine's position within the royal hierarchy. Drawing upon his decades of experience as the Queen's consort and his deep understanding of constitutional monarchy, Philip had crafted language that would fundamentally alter the traditional order of precedence. His reasoning, meticulously documented in accompanying notes, stemmed from his observation of Catherine's dedication to duty, her natural grace under pressure, and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Sir Michael Stevens later recalled the gravity of that moment as he read through the document for the first time. The implications were staggering, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire institution of monarchy. Philip had essentially created a legal framework that would elevate Catherine's status above that of Camilla, the Queen consort, in certain ceremonial and official capacities. This wasn't merely about titles or protocol. It was about Philip's vision for the future of the monarchy and his belief in who could best serve the British people. The document revealed Philip's concerns about the monarchy's public perception and his desire to ensure its survival in an increasingly democratic world. He had witnessed firsthand how public opinion could make or break royal careers, having seen the tumultuous years of the 1990s nearly destroy the institution he had served faithfully for over 7 decades. His private notes, discovered alongside the will, showed his conviction that the monarchy needed leaders who could embody both tradition and modernity, combining royal dignity with genuine relatability. What made Philip's decision even more remarkable was the timing. He had drafted these provisions during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the royal family's role in providing stability and comfort to the nation had never been more crucial. Catherine's appearances during this period, from her virtual engagements with healthcare workers to her participation in the Clap for Carers initiative, had clearly impressed the Duke. He saw in her the same dedication to service that had defined his own royal career, but with a contemporary touch that resonated with younger generations. The will also contained Philip's personal reflections on the changing nature of the monarchy. He wrote extensively about his belief that merit and dedication should take precedence over traditional hierarchies when the institution's survival was at stake. This philosophical foundation would prove crucial in the legal and constitutional debates that would follow the document's revelation. Philip had anticipated the controversy his wishes would create, but he had also provided a robust legal and moral framework to support his decisions. Perhaps most touching were Philip's personal observations about Catherine's character. He noted her unwavering support for William during difficult periods, her natural maternal instincts that reminded him of the late Queen Mother, and her ability to maintain dignity while remaining approachable. These weren't merely ceremonial considerations. Philip saw these qualities as essential for the monarchy's future relevance. His military background had taught him to value substance over appearance, and he clearly believed Catherine possessed the substance necessary for elevated royal responsibility. The discovery of this document would soon set in motion a series of events that would test the very foundations of royal protocol. Palace officials found themselves grappling with the legal implications of Philip's wishes, while simultaneously managing the potential public relations fallout. The Queen's own thoughts on her husband's final wishes remained unknown, but those close to her suggested she had been aware of at least some of his intentions, having discussed the monarchy's future extensively during their final months together. As news of the document's existence began to circulate within the highest echelons of royal administration, it became clear that Philip's final act as a royal consort would prove to be as significant as any of his public service during his lifetime. The Duke of Edinburgh, known for his forthright opinions and unconventional approach to royal duty, had crafted one final statement about the monarchy's future direction, and it centered on his belief in Princess Catherine's exceptional suitability for elevated royal responsibility. The revelation of Prince Philip's private will created an immediate crisis within Clarence House, where Queen Camilla's staff struggled to understand the implications of the Duke's unprecedented decision. Lady Sarah Keswick, Camilla's private secretary, found herself in the uncomfortable position of briefing her employer about provisions that would fundamentally alter her role within the royal hierarchy. The conversation took place in Camilla's private sitting room, overlooking the gardens where she often found solace during turbulent times. Camilla's initial reaction was one of dignified composure, though those present noted the slight tremor in her hands as she processed the information. Having spent years carefully building her reputation and acceptance within the royal family, she now faced the prospect of being symbolically superseded by her daughter-in-law in matters of precedence. The irony was not lost on her that the man who had initially been among her harshest critics had delivered this final blow to her position within the monarchy. The Queen Consort's relationship with Prince Philip had been complex and evolving. In the early years following her marriage to Charles, Philip had maintained a cool distance, remembering his loyalty to Diana and his concerns about the public perception of Camilla's role in the Wales marriage breakdown. However, as years passed and Camilla proved her dedication to royal duty, Philip had gradually warmed to her, appreciating her sense of humor and her unwavering support for Charles during difficult periods. This made Philip's decision all the more surprising to those who had witnessed their improved relationship. Royal biographer Sarah Bradford later suggested that Philip's choice reflected not personal animosity toward Camilla, but rather his pragmatic assessment of what the monarchy needed for its future survival. His military training had taught him to make difficult decisions based on strategic necessity rather than personal preference, and he clearly viewed Catherine as the more valuable asset for the institution's long-term prospects. The constitutional implications of Philip's wishes extended far beyond personal preferences. Legal experts within the royal household began examining the precedent set by previous royal wills and their impact on succession and precedence. The case of Queen Mary's will, which had influenced certain aspects of royal protocol decades earlier, provided some guidance, but Philip's document broke new ground in its specific provisions regarding ceremonial hierarchy during the reign of a monarch, rather than during a transition period. Camilla's supporters within the royal establishment argued that the Duke's provisions violated centuries of established protocol. They pointed out that as the wife of the reigning monarch, Camilla's position as queen consort was constitutionally defined and could not be altered by the private wishes of another royal family member, regardless of his previous status. However, Philip's legal team had anticipated this argument and had crafted language that focused on specific ceremonial roles and public appearances rather than challenging Camilla's constitutional position. The emotional toll on Camilla became evident to those closest to her. During the weeks following the revelation, friends noted that she spent hours in her private chapel at Clarence House, seeking comfort in prayer and reflection. Her scheduled engagements continued without interruption, but staff observed a new tension in her demeanor, particularly when questions arose about her future role or when she appeared at events alongside Catherine. Meanwhile, the relationship between Camilla and Catherine, which had developed into a warm and supportive bond over the years, faced its first serious test. Catherine had been unaware of Philip's intentions and found herself in the awkward position of potentially benefiting from provisions that could be seen as undermining her stepmother-in-law. Palace sources suggested that Catherine had privately expressed her discomfort with the situation and had even considered publicly rejecting Philip's provisions to maintain family harmony. The broader royal family watched these developments with a mixture of fascination and concern. Princess Anne, known for her straightforward approach to royal matters, reportedly supported her father's decision, viewing it as a practical assessment of each person's capabilities and public appeal. However, Other family members worried about the precedent this might set for future internal royal disputes and the potential for private documents to override. Established protocol public reaction to news of Philip's will began to leak despite the palace's attempts at secrecy. Social media buzzed with speculation about the implications, with Catherine's supporters celebrating what they saw as recognition of her exceptional service to the crown. However, Camilla's defenders argued that the queen consort was being unfairly diminished after years of faithful service and gradual acceptance by the British public. This media coverage intensified the pressure on both women, with photographers and reporters scrutinizing every public appearance for signs of tension or discord. Royal correspondents noted subtle changes in body language during joint appearances, though both Catherine and Camilla maintained their professional composure throughout increasingly challenging circumstances. As the palace legal team continued their analysis of Philip's document, it became clear that the Duke had created more than just a will. He had authored a constitutional challenge that would require careful navigation to avoid serious damage to the monarchy's stability. His final wishes had effectively forced a conversation about merit versus tradition within the royal hierarchy, a debate that would resonate far beyond the immediate parties involved. King Charles III found himself facing the most delicate personal and constitutional crisis of his early reign, when senior advisors presented him with the full implications of his father's posthumous wishes. The meeting took place in the throne room at Buckingham Palace, a setting that seemed to emphasize the weight of tradition being challenged by Philip's revolutionary provisions. Charles, dressed in a simple navy suit rather than ceremonial attire, listened in stunned silence as constitutional experts outlined the legal complexities his father had created. The king's relationship with both women at the center of this controversy made his position particularly agonizing. Camilla had been his devoted companion for decades, standing by him through scandal, criticism, and eventual acceptance. She had earned her position as queen consort through years of dedication, and had finally achieved the public respect that had long eluded her. Meanwhile, Catherine had proven herself an invaluable asset to the monarchy, bringing fresh energy and widespread public approval to an institution that desperately needed both. Charles's initial instinct was to find a compromise that would honor his father's memory while preserving his wife's dignity and position. However, the legal team made it clear that Philip's document contained specific language that made partial implementation nearly impossible. The Duke had anticipated attempts at modification and had structured his provisions to function as an integrated whole, making selective compliance legally problematic. The king's private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, later revealed the emotional toll these deliberations took on Charles. The monarch spent sleepless nights walking the corridors of Buckingham Palace, wrestling with the impossible choice between honoring his father's final wishes and protecting his wife's position. Those close to him noted that he frequently retreated to his private study, where portraits of both his parents seemed to observe his every deliberation. Adding complexity to the situation was the growing public awareness of the controversy. Despite the palace's efforts at discretion, details of Philip's will had begun circulating within royal circles, and from there to the media. Charles faced mounting pressure to make a public statement about his intentions, while simultaneously dealing with private tensions within his own family. Palace sources suggested that heated discussions had taken place between Charles and his siblings, with varying opinions on how to proceed. Princess Anne emerged as a strong supporter of implementing their father's wishes, arguing that Philip's decades of service and intimate knowledge of the monarchy's needs should be respected. She pointed out that their father had never made decisions lightly and had clearly given this matter extensive consideration. Her military background and straightforward approach to problem-solving aligned with Philip's own methodology, leading her to view the will as a strategic document rather than a personal slight against Camilla. Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, however, expressed concerns about the precedent this might set and the potential damage to family relationships. Edward, in particular, worried about the impact on Sophie's position within the royal hierarchy and the message this might send about the stability of royal marriages. These family divisions added another layer of complexity to Charles's decision-making process. The king also had to consider the broader constitutional implications of his choice. Legal scholars pointed out that accepting Philip's provisions could establish a precedent, allowing deceased royals to influence succession and precedence through private documents. This raised questions about the monarchy's stability and the potential for future confusion about roles and responsibilities within the royal family. Catherine herself became increasingly uncomfortable with the attention and speculation surrounding her elevated status. Sources close to the Princess of Wales revealed that she had requested private audiences with both Charles and Camilla, expressing her desire to find a solution that would preserve family unity. Her natural diplomacy and genuine concern for others' feelings made her reluctant to accept benefits that might come at Camilla's expense. The international implications of this royal drama also weighed heavily on Charles's mind. Foreign dignitaries and Commonwealth leaders watched the situation closely, as any changes to royal precedents would affect protocol at state events and official ceremonies. The king's constitutional advisors warned that mishandling this situation could affect Britain's diplomatic relationships and the monarchy's international reputation. Charles's contemplation of the situation was further complicated by his awareness of public opinion, polls showing overwhelming support for Catherine's elevation. The British people had embraced the Princess of Wales wholeheartedly, viewing her as the perfect modern royal who combined traditional values with contemporary appeal. These polls suggested that implementing Philip's wishes would be popular with the public, but Charles understood that popularity could not be the sole factor in constitutional decisions. As weeks passed, the strain began showing in Charles's public appearances. Royal photographers noted signs of fatigue and stress, while his official schedule showed several last-minute cancellations attributed to constitutional matters. The king found himself caught between his roles as son, husband, and monarch, with each demanding different responses to his father's final challenge. The situation reached a crescendo when Camilla privately approached Charles with an unexpected proposal. In a conversation that would later be described as one of the most emotionally charged in their relationship, the Queen Consort made a suggestion that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of this royal crisis and demonstrate the depth of her commitment to both her husband and the institution they served. In a moment that would define her legacy as Queen Consort, Camilla made a decision that stunned everyone in the royal household. During a private dinner with Charles at Highgrove House, surrounded by the gardens they had lovingly cultivated together, she presented him with a handwritten letter, outlining her willingness to step aside from certain ceremonial duties to allow Philip's wishes to be implemented. Her words, later described by palace insiders as both heartbreaking and heroic, demonstrated a level of sacrifice that even her critics had not expected. Camilla's proposal was not born of defeat, but of strategic wisdom accumulated through years of navigating royal complexities. She had observed how the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to adapt to changing public expectations while maintaining its essential dignity. Her letter to Charles acknowledged that Philip's assessment of Catherine's value to the institution was likely correct, regardless of personal feelings or traditional protocol. The Queen Consort's decision reflected her deep understanding of her husband's character and the burden he carried as monarch. She had watched Charles struggle with the impossible choice between family loyalty and institutional necessity, and she recognized that her gracious acceptance of a modified role could preserve both the monarchy's stability and her marriage's harmony. Her sacrifice was calculated to demonstrate the very qualities that had eventually earned her public acceptance, putting duty above personal ambition. Charles's reaction to Camilla's letter revealed the depth of his emotional connection to his wife and his appreciation for her wisdom. Palace sources later revealed that the king wept upon reading her words, overwhelmed by her generosity and the impossible position his father had placed them all in. Her willingness to accept a diminished role for the greater good only reinforced his conviction that she possessed exactly the kind of selfless dedication the monarchy required. The practical implementation of Camilla's proposal required delicate negotiations with constitutional experts and palace protocol officers. Rather than completely surrendering her precedence, Camilla suggested a nuanced arrangement whereby Catherine would take precedence at specific types of events, particularly those focused on charitable work, youth engagement, and international diplomacy. This compromise would honor Philip's vision while preserving Camilla's constitutional position as Queen Consort. Catherine's response to learning about Camilla's sacrifice demonstrated why Philip had identified her as exceptional royal material. Rather than celebrating her elevation, the Princess of Wales immediately reached out to her stepmother-in-law to express both gratitude and concern. Their subsequent private meeting at Clarence House, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in an even stronger bond between the two women and a collaborative approach to their evolving roles. The meeting between Catherine and Camilla became legendary within royal circles for its emotional honesty and mutual respect. Both women acknowledged the awkwardness of the situation while committing to work together to ensure the monarchy's continued success. They agreed that their relationship would serve as a model for how the royal family could adapt to changing circumstances without losing its essential character. Palace staff noted a remarkable transformation in the atmosphere following Camilla's decision and Catherine's gracious response. The tension that had gripped the royal household for weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of purposeful collaboration. Even longtime palace veterans accustomed to royal drama and intrigue expressed amazement at the maturity and wisdom displayed by both women. The broader royal family's reaction to this development revealed interesting dynamics within the institution. Princess Anne publicly praised Camilla's decision, noting that it demonstrated exactly the kind of selfless service that Philip had valued most. Prince William, initially concerned about his wife being thrust into an uncomfortable position, came to appreciate both Camilla's sacrifice and Catherine's diplomatic handling of the situation. Legal experts worked around the clock to formalize the arrangement in a way that would satisfy both Philip's provisions and constitutional requirements. The resulting document, known internally as the Windsor Accord, established clear guidelines for precedence at different types of royal events while maintaining Camilla's overall status as Queen Consort. This legal framework would later be cited as a model for how the monarchy could adapt to changing circumstances while preserving constitutional stability. The international diplomatic community watched these developments with keen interest, as any changes to royal precedents would affect protocol at state visits and international ceremonies. Foreign ambassadors and protocol officers required briefings on the new arrangements, and several Commonwealth nations requested clarification about how these changes would affect their own royal protocols. Media coverage of the evolving situation began to shift from speculation about royal tensions to admiration for the mature handling of a potentially explosive situation. Royal correspondents noted the contrast between this controversy and previous royal dramas, highlighting the dignity and cooperation displayed by all parties involved. Public opinion polls showed increasing respect for both Camilla's sacrifice and Catherine's diplomatic response. As the Windsor Accord took shape, palace officials began planning how to present these changes to the public. The challenge lay in explaining the situation without revealing too much about Philip's private criticisms or the constitutional crisis his will had created. The communication strategy would need to emphasize positive aspects of the arrangement while avoiding detailed discussion of the underlying controversy. The resolution of this crisis marked a turning point in the modern monarchy's evolution, demonstrating how personal sacrifice and institutional wisdom could overcome even the most challenging constitutional dilemmas. Camilla's decision would be remembered as a defining moment in her tenure as Queen Consort, while Catherine's gracious response reinforced her reputation as a future queen of exceptional character. The first public implementation of the Windsor Accord came during the annual Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, an event that would serve as the perfect testing ground for the new precedence arrangements. Palace protocol officers spent weeks coordinating the complex logistics of seating, processional order, and ceremonial roles to reflect the subtle but significant changes Philip's will had initiated. The world watched with intense curiosity as Catherine, for the first time, took precedence over Camilla in specific ceremonial contexts. Catherine's preparation for this pivotal moment revealed her deep understanding of the responsibility Philip had placed upon her. She spent hours with former palace staff who had worked closely with the Duke of Edinburgh, seeking to understand his vision for the monarchy's future and her role within it. These conversations, held in the same blue drawing room where Philip had often held his own planning sessions, helped Catherine grasp the weight of expectation now resting on her shoulders. The visual impact of Catherine's elevated position during the Commonwealth service was immediately apparent to royal watchers worldwide. Her placement in the processional, her seat within the abbey, and her role in the ceremonial aspects of the service all reflected her new status under Philip's provisions. However, what struck observers most was her obvious discomfort. With the attention and her repeated gestures of respect and deference toward Camilla throughout the ceremony, Camilla's grace during this first public demonstration of the new arrangements earned widespread admiration from both royal supporters and former critics. Her dignified acceptance of the modified protocol, combined with warm interactions with Catherine throughout the service, provided a masterclass in royal deportment under difficult circumstances. Palace insiders noted that Camilla seemed almost relieved to share some of the ceremonial burden, particularly aspects that involved extensive public interaction with younger audiences. The international diplomatic corps present at the service required detailed briefings about the protocol changes to avoid any awkward moments or breaches of etiquette. Foreign dignitaries found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory as they adjusted to greeting and interacting with royals whose precedents had shifted from traditional expectations. However, the smooth execution of these adjustments demonstrated the palace's meticulous planning and both women's professional competence. Media coverage of the Commonwealth service marked a turning point in public understanding of the situation. Rather than focusing on potential tensions or conflicts, journalists found themselves reporting on the remarkable cooperation and mutual respect displayed by both Catherine and Camilla. Royal commentators began describing the arrangement as a positive evolution of the monarchy, rather than a crisis overcome. Behind the scenes, the success of the Commonwealth Service implementation gave palace officials confidence to proceed with other aspects of Philip's provisions. Plans began developing for Catherine to take leading roles in specific areas of royal patronage, particularly those involving young people, environmental issues, and international charitable work. These assignments aligned with both her personal interests and Philip's assessment of where her talents could best serve the monarchy. The impact on Prince William was profound and multifaceted. As heir to the throne, he watched his wife assume increased responsibilities that would inevitably affect his own future role as king. However, rather than creating tension within their marriage, the situation seemed to strengthen their partnership as they discussed the implications and planned for their evolving roles within the royal hierarchy. Catherine's children also began experiencing the effects of their mother's elevated status. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis found themselves under increased scrutiny as the children of a princess whose role within the monarchy had expanded significantly. Catherine and William worked closely with palace security and education experts to ensure their children's normal development continued. Despite the heightened attention, the ripple effects extended to other working royals who found their own positions and responsibilities shifting to accommodate the new arrangements. Princess Anne increased her public engagements to cover some areas where traditional protocol had been modified, while Prince Edward and Sophie took on additional ceremonial duties. These adjustments required careful coordination to maintain the monarchy's overall effectiveness. Public opinion research conducted during this period revealed fascinating insights into how the British people perceived these changes. Younger demographics expressed strong approval for what they saw as a modernization of outdated protocols, while older generations showed more mixed reactions. However, even skeptics acknowledged the dignity and professionalism with which all parties had handled the situation. The success of the initial implementations led to discussions about expanding Philip's provisions to other areas of royal life. Catherine began taking precedence at certain state dinners, particularly those involving younger foreign leaders or events focused on issues she championed. These changes required extensive coordination with the Foreign Office and diplomatic services to ensure proper protocol was maintained. International royal families watched these developments with great interest, as many faced similar challenges in balancing tradition with contemporary relevance. Several European monarchies requested briefings on how the Windsor Accord had been structured and implemented, viewing it as a potential model for their own modernization efforts. The emotional impact on all parties involved became more apparent as months passed. Catherine privately expressed to close friends her continued amazement at Camilla's generosity and her determination to prove worthy of Philip's confidence. Camilla, meanwhile, found unexpected satisfaction in mentoring Catherine in aspects of royal duty that required experience and wisdom rather than public appeal. The transformation of what could have been a destructive royal crisis into a collaborative evolution of the monarchy stood as testament to the character of the individuals involved and the institution's capacity for adaptation. Philip's final gift to the monarchy was proving to be not just the elevation of Catherine, but the demonstration that the royal family could handle constitutional challenges with wisdom, grace, and mutual respect. 1 year after the revelation of Prince Philip's extraordinary will, the monarchy emerged stronger and more unified than many observers had thought possible. The annual review of the Windsor Accord's implementation revealed remarkable success in achieving Philip's vision, while preserving the institution's stability and the relationships within the royal family. Catherine had grown into her expanded role with grace and competence, while Camilla had found new purpose in areas of service that better suited her experience and interests. The most visible symbol of this transformation came during the state opening of Parliament, where Catherine's presence alongside the King and Queen took on new significance under the modified protocol. Her role in greeting foreign dignitaries, participating in the ceremonial aspects of the event, and representing the monarchy's connection to younger generations demonstrated exactly what Philip had envisioned when he crafted his controversial provisions. Catherine's evolution during this period impressed even skeptics who had initially questioned whether she possessed the depth necessary for elevated royal responsibility. Her increased engagement with constitutional experts, her deeper understanding of Commonwealth relationships, and her sophisticated approach to diplomatic responsibilities showed intellectual growth that matched her expanded role. Palace staff noted her voracious appetite for learning about royal history and constitutional law, subjects that had become essential to her new position. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla had developed into something unprecedented in modern royal history. A genuine partnership between women of different generations united by shared commitment to the monarchy's success. Their weekly private meetings, initially instituted to coordinate their modified roles, had evolved into sessions of mutual mentoring, where Camilla shared decades of experience while Catherine brought fresh perspectives on contemporary challenges. These private meetings became legendary within palace circles for their frank discussions and collaborative problem-solving. Staff members who attended noted the contrast with previous generations of royal women, who had often found themselves in competition rather than cooperation. The partnership between Catherine and Camilla provided a model for how the monarchy could harness different strengths within the same institution. King Charles's reflection on the year since his father's will was revealed showed profound gratitude for how events had unfolded. In private conversations with trusted advisors, he acknowledged that Philip's final intervention had solved several problems he had been unsure how to address. The elevation of Catherine had enhanced the monarchy's appeal to younger demographics, while Camilla's gracious handling of the situation had actually increased public respect for her wisdom and character. The international impact of these changes became evident as other royal families and governments began studying the Windsor Accord as a potential model for institutional modernization. Commonwealth leaders expressed particular interest in how the arrangement had strengthened rather than weakened the monarchy's effectiveness. Several diplomatic missions reported improved reception for British royal representatives in countries where Catherine's elevated profile resonated with younger populations. Perhaps most remarkably, the feared constitutional crisis never materialized. Legal experts who had initially worried about precedents and stability found that the careful implementation of Philip's wishes had actually strengthened constitutional understanding and royal protocol. The Windsor Accord became a case study in how traditional institutions could adapt to changing circumstances without losing their essential character. The impact on Catherine's children proved overwhelmingly positive as they watched their mother handle increased responsibility with competence and grace. Prince George in particular seemed to benefit from observing how royal duty could be both meaningful and personally fulfilling. Palace tutors noted the children's increased interest in their future roles and their pride in their mother's achievements. Public opinion polling conducted on the anniversary of Philip's will showed remarkable results. Support for the monarchy had actually increased during this period of potential crisis, with particular gains among demographics that had previously shown skepticism about royal relevance. Catherine's elevated profile was credited with much of this improvement, validating Philip's assessment of her value to the institution. The media narrative surrounding the royal family had also transformed dramatically. Where once coverage focused on potential conflicts and tensions, journalists increasingly reported on the collaborative and professional approach to royal duties. The success story of the Windsor Accord provided positive content that contrasted sharply with previous decades of royal drama. Behind the scenes, palace staff noted the improved working atmosphere that resulted from clear role definitions and collaborative relationships. The uncertainty and tension that had marked the initial months following Philip's will's revelation had been replaced by purposeful coordination and mutual support among the working royals. As the first anniversary of the Windsor Accord approached, both Catherine and Camilla began planning how to commemorate not just the agreement itself, but the successful partnership it had created. Their joint initiative to establish a foundation honoring Prince Philip's vision for the monarchy's future became a fitting tribute to the man whose final act had transformed potential crisis into institutional strength. The legacy of Prince Philip's private will extended far beyond the individuals directly affected by its provisions. It demonstrated the monarchy's capacity for thoughtful evolution and showed how personal sacrifice in service of institutional goals could create outcomes that benefited everyone involved. Most importantly, it proved that Philip's lifetime of service to the crown culminated in one final gift that would strengthen the monarchy for generations to come. The story of royal shock had become a tale of royal wisdom, transformation, and ultimately triumph. Prince Philip's controversial final wishes had achieved exactly what he had intended: a stronger, more relevant monarchy led by individuals whose character and capabilities were perfectly suited to meet the challenges of a modern constitutional system.